we've got a lot to discuss with John McMullen. We should probably now, in a normal John McMullen segment, it would be Eagles, a little bit of NFL news. But in this case, because we spent so much time debating about Andrew Luck, and that's been still a resonating topic, why don't we start with that? And Andrew Luck. John, where were you when you heard the Andrew Luck news, and what were your initial thoughts?
Something happened with Andrew Luck? I'm like Bill Belichick. This is the first I'm hearing of this.
Right.
Yeah, and you're on MySpace still, too, like Belichick.
Yeah, I mean, I think it surprised everybody, even the Colts. There was that one report that they kind of knew about it since March, but that's been debunked. So I think any time this happened, and it's happened quite a few times in football, to go all the way back to Jim Brown. And I think 1966, retiring at 29. More recently, Barry Sanders, Calvin Johnson. Hey, this game is tough on your body. And Andrew Luck has had a ton of injuries. And it's torn labrum, lacerated kidney, torn rib cartilage. And now he's dealing with this sort of murky ankle/calf injury. Just got tired of it. And so I never criticize anybody for not wanting to go through this. And I say it all the time, and I said it when it happened. I mean, fans think these guys are Madden players, and it takes a lot to play this game. And the assumption that you're going to come back and be completely fine after surgery, after multiple surgeries, is not always the case. And that's what happened here.
Because Steve Burloin played the position, had 19 surgeries as a player, 8 over 2 years. He's ripping Andrew Luck, but obviously Troy Aikman on the other side of the coin says, no way, how can you rip him? So, I mean, are you surprised at the diversity of opinions?
Yeah, I mean, I am surprised that there's people in the industry criticizing, and then it's very few, I think, in the industry. Most of the criticism comes outside from people, as I said, and fans are emotional. Some people understand that. I think it's ridiculous to boo a guy like that, but nonetheless, I mean, yeah, I don't understand. There's this whole new school versus old school. The old school mentality, you fight through it, and people claim that a newer generation is just willing to walk away. I don't think you see a ton of people doing this. It's rare. It's still rare, and it's always happened, as I just explained. This is not the first time this has happened. And it's for different reasons. With Jim Brown, it was contract related. It was he had the opportunity to go to Hollywood, and he chose a different path. With Barry Sanders, who knows? I still don't know why he walked away at the top of this game. Calvin Johnson, though, was extremely beat up, and that's probably the closest comparison because he just walked away because he was tired of the constant rehab and being in constant pain. And Jason Kelsey talked about it. He at least considered retirement, and he says he's going in a year-by-year type of fashion, and he just fought through 3 different injuries last year. So I don't think it's new. I really don't. It's rare, but it's not new.
Yeah, I just don't understand, John, like, former players, I don't care who you are. I don't care if you played the position for 50 years. I don't care if you're a GM around the sport, not around the sport. To call someone out who comes out on record saying, I'm mentally exhausted, I don't enjoy life, I can't go through what I've been through again mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, and to say this guy owes other people anything, it's completely absurd. And it really bothers me and rubs me the wrong way that anyone could have the audacity, who's never walked in that person's shoes, who's being mentally impacted by this, to decide to walk away to get his mind right and to get himself back on track with his life, to come out and say you owe the fans something I think is absolutely obnoxious and absurd, and I couldn't be more against anyone who has that opinion and thought. And now, the second part is there's a lot of dominoes that fall from this decision, which we'll get into in a second.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I don't know why people feel the need, nor do they feel the right to walk in somebody else's shoes and make decisions for them. Like I said, if you want to go out and somehow tear your labrum and lacerate your kidney and rip your rib cartilage apart and then say something about it, maybe I'll listen to you. But as far as unless you've been through that, and even in Steve Berline's case or somebody like that who's criticizing him and they go the rate that maybe he's got a ton of money in the bank and he doesn't have to go through it. I mean, did you ever see the guy play? I mean, that was one of his issues. It was because he was so tough and because he wouldn't give up a play. That was one of the issues on why he kept getting hurt. So I don't give anyone any credibility, and just because you played the game doesn't mean you watched this particular player. And anybody who watched Andrew Luck and is saying he's not tough, well, you're lying because you never watched him play.
Right. It's two people can have the same exact experiences, but one person handles it completely different than the other. So even if someone had identical injuries, identical organization, one person can be mentally tough, or I mean, that's not even the right way to put it, but one person can overcome it, and one person could have more difficulty overcoming it. It doesn't make one person better or one person right and the other person wrong. But, to follow up with all this.
Maybe, and I'll say this, maybe if Andrew Luck played the game like Steve Berline, he wouldn't be retired because he'd be sitting in the pocket getting rid of the football instead of trying to extend plays and taking hit after hit after hit. So that's part of it as well.
There you go. And I guess what's next is, I mean, I could talk about the decision with you, I think, for 2 hours. But
you did see John getting the back and forth on Twitter, too, about, the Eagles then going to make a corresponding move. And there you go, John. Even your own fellow beat writers don't necessarily agree. Like, I thought you had some tinder to that fire, if you will, or some kindling, if you will, that there's an obvious move out there with Frank Reich, and maybe they move Sudfeld to clear up their quarterback logjam. I'm just guessing that's where you're going to go, Ryan.
Yeah.
What was it? Les Bowen was like, I don't know about it. You and Les are going back and forth. Like, it's hard to get a quorum or all rowing in the same direction sometimes.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the case of potentially trading Nate Sudfeld, there's a lot of caveats. I just brought up the point that Indianapolis, if you recall, tried to sign Nate Sudfeld off the Eagles practice squad back in the Super Bowl season. So there was interest at one point. Frank is now there. Frank Reich is the head coach. So if anything, you would figure there'd be more interest. The Eagles have made their decision on the backup quarterback, and that's Josh McCown. And then you have the Howie Roseman effect, who doesn't like to give up on draft choices. So to me, the easiest answer for the Eagles is just to cut Clayton Thorson, because I don't think he deserves to make this team. But we know Howie Roseman's history, and he has difficulty giving up on draft choices that first year. He kept Janelle Pumphrey and Shelton Gibson. I have never seen, and I hate to pick on a player, I have never seen a receiver have a worse camp than Shelton Gibson. He did not deserve to make this team as a rookie. Howie kept him. So if Howie can swallow his ego and just say, you know what, Clayton Thorson is not what we thought he was, and then you just move forward. I think that's what Les was getting at. I don't think the Eagles dislike Nate Sudfeld at all, but you're not going to keep four quarterbacks. Anybody who's been around the NFL, you don't have work for four quarterbacks. How it works in the regular season, the first-string quarterback gets about 80% of the reps, the second-team quarterback gets the rest, and the third-team quarterback runs the scout team. There's no work for a fourth-team quarterback. So if you're keeping him around, even on the practice squad, it's just to say, I don't want to admit I made a mistake. So I don't know how Howie's going to handle it. In the past, he's had trouble giving away and admitting that he's missed on a draft pick. So that was really the crux of that tweet from my perspective.
John, so what do you anticipate the Colts to do here? Is Jacoby Brissett the guy? Is he the fallback plan? Is Jay Cutler going to stop filming very Cavallari and come out of retirement? Are they going to make a trade? Like, what are the Colts? What are their options?
Yeah, I think Brissett's going to be the starting quarterback, and they have to bring in a veteran backup, and that's where I brought up Nate Sudfeld, who's not much of a veteran, but he's at least a veteran. I think they have P.J. Walker, the former Temple quarterback, and I have another body, Chad Kelly, but he's suspended for the first 2 games. So they need another quarterback, but they're looking for a backup. It's interesting because of the backup quarterback position here and how important it's been, and Nick Foles, and now going out and getting Josh McCown. I talked to 4 different personnel people around this league, and this is before Andrew retired, and 3 of them said Brissett was the best backup quarterback in football. So wow. It's never great when you lose a superstar, but they're in better position than most. So I think you see some people saying, man, if the Eagles held on to Nick Foles, nah. Jacoby Brissett makes $2 million. You would have to pay Nick Foles $25 million because, remember, he would be on the franchise tag. And then you'd have to give up a second-round pick on top of it. No, this is not a Minnesota situation. I think people look at Minnesota and the Sam Bradford trade. At that particular time when Teddy Bridgewater went down, the backup was Sean Hill. And if you would have asked those same personnel people, where was Sean Hill as backup quarterback, you probably would have gotten 30, not 1. So Jacoby Brissett is a legitimate prospect. It's still devastating for the Colts. Don't get me wrong. You can't replace Andrew Luck, but they are in the best possible situation they could be with their backup, who is now their starter.
Right, so we're talking about personnel and, personnel decisions that the Colts may or may not make. So let's bring this back to the Philadelphia Eagles and why we're here. And, I see a tweet a little bit ago, John, that Jordan Mailata was not seen at practice today. And then, that's tweeted out by Zach Rosenblatt. And, the comments and the rumors immediately follow that tweet saying, well, that's because he's clearly involved in a Jadeveon Clowney trade. So I want your thoughts or, explanation on why Mailata's not practicing, and is that trade gaining traction as the week could go on here?
Well, I don't know why he wasn't at practice, number one. My guess is he's got a bit of a bulky back, and it's as simple as that. Earlier this summer, when Crevan LeBlanc didn't show up for practice, the Eagles are going to trade him. And what happened? He was hurt. I mean, that's the most logical explanation. You're certainly not getting Jadeveon Clowney for Jordan Mailata. I mean, that's the second part of it. Fans go back and forth between, could you send Wendell Smallwood in a third-round pick for Jadeveon Clowney, or could you send Jordan Mailata in a fourth-round conditional pick for Jadeveon Clowney? I mean, the Texans don't have a general manager and probably have had a terrible offseason as a whole. I think that's fair. But they're not village idiots. They're not giving up a talent like that for essentially nothing. So, no, I don't think there's anything more to it unless you're giving Mailata and a first-round pick. Yeah, maybe they talk about that.
Right. Now, I also saw, one more here on the Clowney front. I also saw that Alshon Jeffrey is a name. Is there any validity to that? I also saw Nelson Aguilar and potential names that could be traded away for Clowney. I saw that. So what are your thoughts there, or is there nothing to it?
Well, I think I told Pete this over the weekend. With Howie, you always leave the door open a little bit because he's more apt to trade than any other general manager in the NFL. That's why you have all these rumors. Because let's be honest, the Alshon Jeffrey was complete speculation by somebody not in Philadelphia who saw J.J. Arcega-Whiteside have a good preseason game and said, wow, maybe they want to open up playing time for J.J. And that's not, if you think you're a Super Bowl contender, that's not what you do. You don't trade veteran, proven players so you can play rookies. That's not where the Eagles are. In the case of Jadeveon Clowney, there's a couple things on top of the fact that he's really good. You'd have to give up significant assets. You also have to pay him a lot. He's under the franchise tag. He still has to sign it. What that means is you also can't work out an extension. So there's a lot of hurdles as far as getting something like that done. And everybody has thrown every name at the wall because it's Howie Roseman. And I'm not going to say he wouldn't like a Jadeveon Clowney. I think every team in this league would like that kind of talent. But as far as the hurdles to get there, and as far as people like Wendell Smallwood or Josh Adams or Jordan Mailata, you got to do a lot better than that. They don't want to trade Alshon Jeffrey. Nelson Aguilar's on the final year of his contract. We talked about trades with him. I don't think the Eagles want to trade them. I think they're happy with their roster. I think they think they're a Super Bowl team coming into this season. If the Texans drop something in their lap, I would open the door 5%, but I would say it's very unlikely.
John McMullen with us, our 97.3 ESPN Eagles Insider. Eagles getting ready for that all-important, critical preseason game number 4. Young gentleman just walked in here to the Barefoot Bar with a Jets jersey on. That's an Eagles or Jets T-shirt, I should say.
A T-shirt jersey.
Right. Did not spring for the full jersey, just a T-shirt. You never know. It's the Jets. Sam Darnold might be on the way out. You just never know, right? So he's brave. John, today coordinator day, right? I'm kidding, obviously, about preseason game number 4 being important. But at the same time, there are still some roster spots up for grabs. Anything come out of the coordinators today that stuck out to you and made you raise an eyebrow?
No, I think Jim Schwartz kind of gave an indication, even though he said no when he was asked about the starting corners, and he kind of joked about it. But then when he was asked about individual players, you could read the tea leaves, and I just wrote about this for 973ESPN.com. Ronald Darby's going to start as soon as he's cleared. Avonte Maddox is going to be the slot corner. And then it comes down to Sidney Jones versus Rasul Douglas at the other position, as Jalen Mills most likely starts the season on the PUP list. So even though he said he's not going to tell, he kind of told, which is kind of funny. But if you've been listening to this show every day, you've known it's going to be Darby, it's going to be Maddox in the slot, it's most likely going to be Sidney Jones at the other spot.
That's on the defensive side of the ball. I know on the offensive side of the ball, there's some question mark at tight end, right? How many tight ends are they going to keep? Obviously not at the top, but at the other side.
Yeah, I mean, we still need further clarification on Richard Rodgers, how significant this injury is. It certainly looked bad when it happened, but the Eagles didn't shut him down. They didn't put him on IR. You would think because of the presence of Zach Ertz and Dallas Goedert that the Eagles are going to play more 12 personnel, more 2 tight ends, and they played 2 tight ends more than anybody else last season. That should only increase. But if you do that, you need 4 probably. So when people talk about Richard, he was locked in as that third tight end. If he's able to come back in, say, 4 or 5 weeks, they might carry him on the roster. Other than that, Josh Perkins is the next in line, and he's more of a receiving tight end. And then you have Will Tye, who's an ex-New York Giant, who's more of an inline tight end, and Alex Ellis, who got here late. I think that Rodgers injury, if he can't play this season, I think it's a little bigger than people realize because he was a good third tight end who can do both things. He doesn't have a ton of speed, but he's got great hands as a receiver, and he's a capable inline blocker. And that's something you need. You need depth, and I think, as I said, I think that's a bigger injury than people realize.
Do think the running back rotation is set, that they have an idea of how many they're going to keep and what roles they're going to use them in?
Yeah, I mean, we know Jordan Howard is going to be the lead back. And what gives you best evidence, I know a lot of people are excited about Miles Sanders, but he's a rookie and they want to ramp him up slowly. And what gives that away is he's still taking the first team reps at kick return. So if you're going to be the starting running back, you're not going to be the starting kick returner. That's just not what the Eagles do. So that's a dead giveaway. And Darren Sproles is going to be the third down back. So what it is, it's going to be Jordan Howard, and you rotate Miles Sanders in to replace him as sort of the change of pace back, and Darren's the third down back. Corey Clement's the top backup. And then you have to start talking, if you want to keep five, I think it would be Josh Adams over Wendell Smallwood.
So, John, I'm like king of the rumor mill today. I saw the other day as well, pure rumor and speculation, but it gained a little bit of traction on social media. Well, what's up with the rumors that like Jordan Howard might not make the team? Like, what is that about? Like, but there was some legitimacy to his.
It is because of people, and I use that Jeffrey. I don't know, it was something called the Pro Football Network. And again, they saw the preseason game. And they don't get to be at practice every day. They don't understand what's going on in Philadelphia on the ground. Same thing with Miles Sanders. People look at his explosion and they say, well, he's better. And as I said, when you get to see a couple series in a preseason game, well, we're at, I don't know what we're at over 20, I think 22 or 23 practices. You have the same amount of walkthroughs. You have team meetings every day. There's far more than those couple series you see in the preseason games. And as I said, when you're at practice every day and you see that Miles is the first kick returner, that tells you not only is Jordan Howard going to make this team, he's going to be the starting running back.
John McMullen with us on 97.3 ESPN. Eagles with that final preseason game against the Jets. Walk us through, John, how, and this happens every year, like, how do the Eagles, when do they announce their cuts? When do they make them? When do players find out? Like, what do we expect? How's that all going to break down from Thursday night when the clock hits zeros to when we find out?
Well, the deadline is Saturday, so you have that extra day. Generally, cuts tend to seep out a little by little, and players start getting informed on Friday. The Eagles generally wait till the last minute officially, so you'll see the official cut list on Saturday, and the vast majority kind of already know. And that's, I think Andrew Brandt tweeted this earlier, and he said it's sad, but I mean, most of the players that are going to suit up on Thursday night don't have a chance of making the team. And it's, the best. The only thing I'm looking forward to is seeing Joe Douglas up there. And if you look at the press box at MetLife, there might be more people in the press box than there will be in the stands, because New York fans do not show up for the fourth preseason game.
Yeah, you're almost spot on with this tweet. I'll read it word for word because I have it called up. Inconvenient truth. There are literally hundreds of NFL players who will practice this week and play in the games with no chance in God's green earth of making their teams. Playing on Thursday, cut on Friday. Andrew Brandt with that tweet, and you agree with that. And Colin Thompson's going to join us in the next segment, John, and he understands football. He played the game, for gosh sakes, and he knows what it's like to be one of those guys trying to make a roster. And then, what do they call the guy? The Turk, right? You don't want to, coach needs to see you. Bring your playbook. Ugh. You never want to hear that sentence.
And, it's a sad week, I think, for everybody. Jim Schwartz kind of talked about this a little bit today, especially when you've been around. It's not a fun time for coaches either, because everybody does work so hard, and you got to make difficult decisions, and 90 turns into 53 in one fell swoop. Used to be a couple different cuts. The silver lining is 10-man practice squads can start 24 hours later. So 320 of those players will be brought back to a practice squad. So that's something. But a lot of people kind of lose their dream this Saturday.
He's our 97.3 ESPN Eagles insider. John McMullen joins us every day here on the show for Football at 4. And, geez, John, I guess if the timing is right, then Saturday morning you and I can maybe go through who we think is gone, and then by the next time they talk to you, we'll see if you got them all right, right? I mean,
I got 52 the last 2 years, so there's a lot of pressure on me. I got 52 out of 53.
52.
We'll
Come
see.
on, man.
We'll see if you can get a perfect 53 out of 53. Thank you, my friend. We look forward to catching up with you. And, of course, you'll be on again tomorrow for Football at 4.
All right. Thank you, guys.